Hawaii was never supposed to be part of the United States. It was once an internationally recognized sovereign kingdom with its own government, its own constitution, and diplomatic relations with major powers like Britain, France, and the United States itself. In fact, by the mid-1800s, the Kingdom of Hawaii had a literacy rate higher than that of the US, its own currency, a functioning postal system, and embassies abroad. This wasn't a remote territory or a colony, it was a nation. And then, in 1893, everything changed. Not through war, not through diplomacy, but through an illegal coup orchestrated by American businessmen and backed by unauthorized US military intervention. The result was the dismantling of a monarchy and the beginning of what many legal scholars, Native Hawaiians, and even the US government itself would later acknowledge as an act of colonization. The Kingdom of Hawaii was unified in 1795 under King Kamehameha the Great after a series of inter-island battles. Over the next several decades, Hawaii developed into a modern constitutional monarchy. It had written laws, an elected legislature, and was recognized as a sovereign state under international law. It was a thriving, self-governing country, but the seeds of its overthrow were already being planted by American sugar planters, missionary families, and businessmen who had moved to Hawaii and gained increasing control over land and wealth. In the late 1800s, American sugar interests in Hawaii were booming, but there was a problem: tariffs. If Hawaii became part of the United States, sugar exports would be cheaper. The solution? Remove the Hawaiian monarchy and install a government friendly to US economic interests. In January 1893, Queen Liliʻuokalani, the last reigning monarch of Hawaii, attempted to promulgate a new constitution that would restore power to the monarchy and Native Hawaiian people. In response, a small group of American businessmen and plantation owners, backed by the US Minister to Hawaii, John L. Stevens, organized the overthrow. On January 17, 1893, US Marines landed in Honolulu without presidential or congressional approval. They supported the coup by positioning themselves near government buildings. Under duress and facing potential bloodshed, Queen Liliʻuokalani yielded authority, temporarily, she thought, to avoid violence, trusting that the United States would right the wrong. President Grover Cleveland, who had just taken office, was appalled. He launched a formal investigation led by James Blount, a former congressman. The Blount report concluded that the overthrow was illegal, that the US military had acted without authority, and that the Hawaiian monarchy should be restored. Cleveland even called the coup an act of war, but Congress, influenced by expansionists, refused to act. The US allowed the illegal provisional government to remain in power. In 1894, the coup leaders declared the Republic of Hawaii, with Sanford Dole, yes, like the pineapple, as its president. But Native Hawaiians were not silent. In 1897, more than 21,000 Native Hawaiians signed the Kūʻē Petitions to oppose annexation by the United States. That number represented the vast majority of Native adults in the islands at the time, but the US didn't listen. In 1898, amidst the Spanish-American War, the US saw Hawaii as a strategic military asset. But here's the problem: they didn't have the Senate votes to ratify a treaty of annexation. So instead, Congress passed the Newlands Resolution, a joint resolution, not a treaty. Under international law, a joint resolution passed by one country cannot annex another sovereign nation. It's as if Congress passed a resolution saying they owned Canada. That's not how international law works. But the US moved forward anyway. No vote of the Hawaiian people, no treaty, no consent. And just like that, Hawaii was claimed by the United States, illegally, according to both Native Hawaiians and many legal scholars. The Queen protested, the people protested, but by then, Hawaii had become a military outpost, a sugar colony, and a stepping stone to empire in the Pacific. In 1959, the US held a vote to determine Hawaii's political status, but there were only two options on the ballot: become a US state or remain a US territory. Independence was not an option, even though Hawaii had once been a sovereign nation with diplomatic recognition from the international community. Roughly 1/3 of Hawaii's population at the time were US military personnel or dependents, many of whom were not born in the islands. Native Hawaiians were now a minority in their own land, and decades of Americanization had eroded language, land ownership, and cultural continuity. The vote passed, 94% in favor of statehood, but under fundamentally flawed conditions. It excluded meaningful self-determination and failed to meet the standards of decolonization outlined by the United Nations. It was a colonial referendum with no independence box. Even the US Congress has admitted wrongdoing. In 1993, President Bill Clinton signed the Apology Resolution, which acknowledged that the overthrow of the Kingdom of Hawaii occurred with the active participation of agents and citizens citizens of the United States, and that Native Hawaiians never relinquished their claims to sovereignty. Today, many tourists visit Hawaii for sun and beaches, but beneath the surface, the wounds of colonization remain. Native Hawaiians are still fighting for land, for cultural survival, and for recognition. The fight to protect Mauna Kea, a sacred mountain targeted for telescope construction, is just one example of ongoing resistance. Language revitalization programs, land-back movements, and sovereignty organizations continue the work started over a century ago. Hawaiian history is not just a chapter of US expansion, it's a story of survival, of a nation that was stolen, of a people who are still here. The truth is, Hawaii was never legally annexed. It became a US state under illegitimate circumstances, and no apology can undo that. But knowing the truth is a start, because a nation that was taken can still demand to be seen. A vote without a real choice is not democracy, and a people denied independence never gave it up. They had it taken away. If you believe that history matters, that sovereignty matters, and that truth should not be buried under tourism brochures, then help share this story. Hawaii is not just a state, it is a stolen kingdom. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more deep dives into the world's incredible histories.